History is full of moments that make us uncomfortable. Moments where ordinary people, not so different from us, made choices that seem unthinkable today. The year 1692 in colonial Massachusetts was one such time. In the small, isolated community of Salem Village, a shadow fell. It wasn't a shadow cast by war or famine, but one born from fear, suspicion, and a crisis of faith that would turn neighbors against each other. This is the story of the Salem Witch Trials. But it's more than just a ghost story. It's a story about the danger of abandoning reason. It's about how quickly a community can unravel when fear is allowed to become the ultimate authority. And it's a cautionary tale that, in many ways, is just as relevant today as it was over 300 years ago. Imagine Salem Village in the dead of winter. The world outside is frozen, hostile. Life is hard, governed by strict Puritan beliefs. The wilderness feels vast and dangerous, and the devil is considered a very real, tangible presence, constantly seeking a foothold in their godly society. This isn't just a belief, it's a fact of life for the people here. The Bible is their law, and the minister is their guide through a world filled with temptation and sin. At the center of our story is the home of the village minister, Reverend Samuel Parris. It's January of 1692. Inside that house, his 9-year-old daughter, Betty, and his 11-year-old niece, Abigail Williams, begin to act strangely. They cry out, contort their bodies into painful-looking shapes, and complain of being pinched and pricked by invisible forces. The local doctor is baffled. He can find no physical cause. He suggests a supernatural one. The word witchcraft begins to be whispered. The girls are pressured to name who is tormenting them. And they do. They name 3 women. The first is Tituba, the Parris family's enslaved servant, brought from the Caribbean. The second is Sarah Good, a homeless beggar. The third, Sarah Osborne, an elderly woman who rarely attended church and was involved in a property dispute. Notice who was chosen. They were the outliers, the people on the lowest rungs of the social ladder. They were easy targets, women without power or status to defend themselves. This is how the fire starts. Not with a blaze, but with a single, well-placed spark on the driest tinder. During the initial examinations, something new and terrifying is introduced to the legal process: spectral evidence. The afflicted girls claim to see the spirits or specters of the accused attacking them in the courtroom. No one else can see these spirits, of course. The court must take the girls at their word. How do you defend yourself against a crime that no one can see? The answer is you can't. A denial was seen as proof of guilt. A confession, however, might save your life, but it required you to name other witches. Tituba, likely under duress, confesses. But she doesn't just confess. She weaves a vivid tale of a devil's book of writing on sticks, and of a conspiracy of witches right there in Salem Village. She confirms the colonists' deepest fears, and in doing so, she opens the floodgates. Her confession turns a small investigation into a full-blown panic. The accusations begin to fly, and they no longer stick to the fringes of society. Soon, respected, church-going members of the community find themselves in chains. Martha Corey, a woman known for her piety. Rebecca Nurse, a frail, 71-year-old grandmother beloved by her neighbors. When Rebecca Nurse was accused, many people were shocked. 39 of the most prominent members of the community signed a petition vouching for her good character. It didn't matter. The jury initially found her not guilty, but the magistrate and the crowd reacted with such fury that the jury was forced to reconsider. Rebecca Nurse was condemned and hanged, but not everyone was silent. One man, a farmer named John Proctor, became the story's tragic voice of reason. He openly scoffed at the accusations, calling the afflicted girls scammers and liars. He saw the proceedings for what they were, a dangerous farce. When his own house servant, Mary Warren, one of the accusers, began to have fits, Proctor threatened to beat her, and her fits miraculously stopped. He knew it was a performance. His skepticism made him a target. When his wife, Elizabeth, was accused, John stood by her, defending her innocence. And for that, he was accused himself. In prison, he wrote a desperate letter to the clergy of Boston, begging for a change of venue or for more credible judges. He wrote, "If it be possible, our innocent blood may be spared. I would humbly beg you that you would help us to this." He wasn't just pleading for his life. He was pleading for reason itself. John Proctor's plea was ignored. He was offered a deal: confess and live. He refused. He said he could not confess to a lie and part with his good name. On August 19, 1692, he was hanged. He chose his integrity over his life. Perhaps the most brutal and bizarre episode of the trials was that of Giles Corey, an 81-year-old farmer. He too was accused. Knowing that a conviction would mean his property would be forfeited, leaving his family with nothing, he refused to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty. He would not engage with the corrupt court at all. The punishment for this was horrific. He was subjected to peine forte et dure, where heavy stones were slowly placed upon his chest to force a plea. For 2 days, Giles Corey endured the torture. His only response to the court's demands for a plea was to ask for more weight. He died under the crushing weight of the stones, but he died without a conviction. His farm passed to his sons. In his final defiant act, he had beaten the system. His death was a profound shock to the community. People began to wonder if things had gone too far. How could a system that did this to an old man be just? Slowly, the tide began to turn. The accusers grew bolder, more reckless. They began to accuse people who were simply too powerful, including the wife of the governor of Massachusetts, William Phips. Governor Phips finally stepped in. He prohibited further arrests, released many of the accused, and dissolved the court that had overseen the trials. He replaced it with a new court that did not allow spectral evidence. With that single, rational change, the conviction stopped. The Salem Witch Trials were over. In just over a year, more than 200 people had been accused. 30 were found guilty. 19 were hanged. Giles Corey was pressed to death, and at least 5 others died in the squalor of the prisons. The aftermath was one of shame and deep regret. Samuel Sewall, one of the main judges, stood up in church years later and publicly apologized for his role, asking for forgiveness from God and the community. So why do we remember Salem? We remember it as a testament to what happens when we allow fear to dictate justice. When we stop listening to reason and start believing the loudest, most hysterical voices in the room. The story of Salem isn't really about witches. It's about us, about our own capacity for judgment and our own responsibility to question authority and demand evidence. It's a plea echoing through the centuries to never, ever let reason be silenced.